And this is PRI's Science in the Virtual Pub. And you can find, we've got an echo coming from Bill. There you go. Um, and I'll put some stuff in the chat that you can look at. Well, oops,
I have two files I'd like to put in there that people can download.
that's not what I meant to put in the chat. Okie doke, go ahead and put them in there.
Okay, let me just see.
I put the wrong thing in the chat. Let me fix that. Well, you're echoing. I'm turning to. So we'll get started about 5 after the hour. And in the meantime, there's some stuff in the chat you can take a look at. And welcome one and all to Science in the Virtual Pub. I'm Don Haas, the Director of Teacher Programming at PRI and the host of Science in the Virtual Pub. We meet the second and fourth Thursdays of the month from late September through mid-May. And you can donate there to support us. And the link's in the chat too. And as I said, we'll get started about 5 minutes after the hour. And we'll have a coming attraction slideshow. Here is tonight's talk, Fact, Fiction, and the Gist, helping teens navigate the world of AI with Alison Herman from Cornell University. And 2 weeks from tonight, we'll have Adrienne Lamb from Binghamton University talking about Antarctica's view on extreme volcanism of the past. And she just returned from Antarctica. And then our Earth Day event will be Peter Bardaglio talking about power for the people, democracy, renewable energy, and civic action. And we'll close out the spring season with Ling Wei Kong talking about can science and AI predict ecological collapse. So we got 2 AI sessions this spring. And our exhibit at the Museum of the Earth is Marvelous Mollusks, and that'll be up for the rest of the year. And you can check out what's coming up. And I'll note we've got a couple of things planned for the fall already. We will have a speaker from Mount Washington Observatory with some of the most extreme weather in North America. And we will have a materials conservationist. And I think she'll be talking about her work with materials from the Titanic. So some interesting stuff coming up. And there is the most recent issue of our educator newsletter. Another one will be out in April. And you can check that out and you can subscribe as well. And I think we'll let the slides roll through one more time and then I'll hand it off to Allison for tonight's program. And I will also pour myself a beer since we are in the pub.
Um, Don,
Yep.
how can I upload my, I'm not exactly sure how to put my files. You said I can put it in the chat or
Well, depends if you've got a link for it, you can put the link in the chat. Otherwise, you can email it to me and I can link it from your talk description,
okay.
whichever's easier for you.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think, oh, actually, all right, well, I have one. Let's see here. Okay, so I'm going to, okay, that's one, which is basically the resources about today's talk. So it includes publications and links to the publication.
Great.
And I also, I'm going to make a plug here for our a research project. We're recruiting teenagers
Oh,
between the
great.
ages of 13 to 17. We're looking for them to participate in a research study.
Cool.
And it's an online survey. Let me just see here. And we're hoping people can share it with everybody they know, students, siblings, children, grandchildren.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah, if you want it broadly spread, I can put it out on a couple of teacher listservs too.
yeah, that would be great because it, yeah, what it does, hold on a second, get back to where it was. Because what it does is it allows us to, uh, I've had problems in the past where I actually, we tried different social media uh, options for posting recruitment stuff and very bad with bots. I can just tell you it was not good. So we're hoping people, it's sort of like word of mouth as opposed to posting it in something that's beyond like a listserv, which is nice because they're all like-minded people as opposed to out there where people you don't know who's possibly clicking on stuff. Okay. All right. Well, let me just
Great.
see.
I will narrate the slideshow one more time through, and then I
Okay,
will
sure.
pass it off to you.
Okay.
So, welcome to Science in the Virtual Pub. Tonight's speaker is Allison Herman from Cornell University, and she is talking about fact, fiction, and the gist, helping teens navigate the world of AI. 2 weeks from tonight, we'll have Adrienne Lamb, who will appear here in a moment. There she is, talking about Antarctica's view on extreme volcanism of the past. And Adrienne rather, is at Binghamton University. Our Earth Day speaker on the 23rd will be Peter Bardaglio, talking about power for the people, democracy and renewable energy, and civic action. And our closing session for the spring will be Can Science and AI Predict Ecological Collapse with Dr. Ling Wei Kong, also from Cornell. And with that, I am going to stop sharing and pass it off to Allison Herman. Take it away, Allison.
Okay. Okay. Let's see here. And just see here. And where am I here? Great. Oh, where's my trying to find my sharing down here.
Right, right.
Everybody.
The green button in the middle of the bottom of
Oh,
your
right.
Zoom
Okay,
window.
great. Yep. Sorry. It's
That's
just,
okay.
oh, there it is. Okay, sorry. Just got obscured there. Here we go. Okay. All right. Good. Um, am I showing up on this?
Not seeing it yet. There we go.
Okay, great. All right. Okay. Well, my name is Allison Herman, and I am the manager of research and outreach for Cornell University's Laboratory for Rational Decision Making. The director is Valerie Reyna, and we came up with this idea of a workshop for teens to help them think about the risks of artificial intelligence. Our lab focuses on decision making, particularly about risk, and Valerie has developed a model that addresses sort of developmental changes that occur from young childhood up to through adulthood, and how these developmental changes have profound effects on decision making. And we're already, I would say, we're already seeing some of the possible risks of artificial intelligence. In fact, Valerie was on a panel for the American Psychological Association. They just came out with um, a um, an advisory, sorry, for using chatbots, particularly chatbots in therapeutics situations, and what are the dangers of that. And I'd say there are other aspects of AI that are important to think about. And we, when we came up with this idea of a workshop, we were doing it primarily not only to teach about what artificial intelligence is and how one uses it and what are the possible risks. We also were dealing with issues of scientific literacy. And this is sort of an ongoing uh, outreach program that we have, which is to talk about the science behind what we do, because we live in an age where it's not always clear what exactly science is and how you do it. In fact, this was developed for a 4-H program called Career Explorations that occurs during the summer. And we had a good time doing this. We had a lot of nice interaction and conversation about the topics that we talked about. Okay. So, for us, um, we actually have done a bit of research that's connected to the decision-making work that's based on MRI data. We also have EEG data. So we've used different kinds of technology to, get to have a better picture of the actual cognitive processes that are involved in decision making. And I think that's not always clear, particularly for young people. The idea of, on the one hand, like with phrenology, in the sense of touching, it feels, there's that feeling, the feeling of science as opposed to, what are the kinds of ways of actually uh, testing out theories and how is it that we got from here to here, so how is it we move from phonology to actually having these illustrations that can talk about functional areas of the brain and how they're connected to cognitive processes. And part of how we got there, of course, and you guys are everyone is aware of this idea of the scientific method. I go through this kind of these this kind of introduction because I think one of the unfortunate side effects of the way science is communicated to the public, and I think this is even for the case for young people, is not understanding the whole. It's not just the experimental process, but the whole, in a sense, conversation that ultimately occurs throughout the course of developing a study and having the products of the study, having it out there and it being a conversation. It's a living, breathing thing. Once you put that paper out there and people start looking at the research and wanting to understand it. And I think that's a part that we also kind of emphasize is that, once you produce a paper and, you're talking about the work that you do, that's not the end of the story. It's going to keep going and going, and we're going to add to it. So there's multiple truths that ultimately happen, sort of slicing, the facets of a stone. So anyway, so one of the issues that we have found important is because we've been doing work also on social media and how people interpret information that they're getting, particularly health information, because we're concerned about um, uh, how that information that people are um, that they're getting from the internet, how they're processing that information, and then ultimately sharing it, making decisions about it themselves, and then sharing that information with others. So on the one hand, there's knowing what that, having uh, knowing what do we mean when we say information. It's so strange to be at a point in time when you have to make these kinds of distinctions, but it's critical, in the sense of, saying what are these facts, science facts, versus, what do we mean by misinformation and disinformation? Even, talking about, this idea of misinformation and disinformation, I would say where the misinformation happens, particularly for the kinds of work that we've done in the lab, is looking to see kind of the errors people make that happen as a consequence of the way our cognitive processes work. It's not necessarily that you meant to do them or, intentionally were trying to deceive someone, but rather the way that you process information has led you to maybe not, process the information so that it's consistent with the original information. Whereas the disinformation, of course, is the being is to be deceived. And we have another project that's sort of parallel to this that involves financial literacy, and we focus on particularly on numeracy. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you? No, okay, sorry. So we focus on financial literacy, and one aspect of disinformation is the fact, for example, when young people are looking at things like cryptocurrency or some of these things that they're presented with information, they have to make a decision about should I trust or is this true what I'm being told? So this idea of being deceived becomes important to understand, what is happening here with this information and being able to weigh it and judge it, not just passively take the information in. So anyway, so that's sort of we make a point of emphasizing that. Within this model, it's called fuzzy trace theory. I in the chat, I actually posted several publications of Valerie's that I think give you a nice overview of particularly this idea with the AI, but also about the theory, about fuzzy trace theory and how you can apply that to your own science work and communications, particularly in things like health issues. Well, within this theory, there are two ways that we represent information. We represent it either in a verbatim format or in a gist format. In the verbatim format, the information you're in a sense taking in superficial bits of information. It's sort of like it's more cursory. It's not. It doesn't really give you it's impressionistic. It's not, very detailed. I mean, in the sense of, what I mean to say is it's not very deep. It's just more, this is where it would be like, writing down a phone number or something like that. That kind of information doesn't really tell you anything beyond just a set of number or, bits of information that doesn't really have any meaning beyond that immediate piece of information. Just information is more uh, embellished, it's fuller, it's richer, it's taking away sort of the important bits of information about something. And this is something that allows us to, as we're reading a book or as we're studying a lesson from a course, you're getting the whole meaning of something. You're not just looking at little bits of details within a lecture or whatever. You're actually trying to get the whole story of what happened in uh, that lecture, for example. So anyway, so the issue with the verbatim is it's superficial, it's not very detailed, and that has implications for how we reason if we're going from something that's more superficial. It again, it doesn't have a depth of meaning where the gist representation does. It's a richer kind of way of reasoning. And I'm bringing in the Turing test. Again, this is I'm showing you basically the workshop PowerPoint that we use with the teenagers. And the thing that makes the Turing test so interesting is um, you would think that at this point in time it's no longer really valid, but it does have meaning in that, like here, you start off where I assume everybody knows about the Turing test. It was the imitation game, the idea of trying to figure out whether, if you ask this question, and you have the person who's asking the question and you're trying to find out if if the answer is coming from a computer or from a human. So the question is, what is your favorite food? And one response is pizza cupcakes. The other is peanut butter and hot dogs. And, it's like, how is it that the judge is making that decision? Well, we actually have a similar situation now. It's kind of inverted, where we have in CAPTCHA having it make a decision about what is a computer or what is human. And it's an interesting kind of twist in terms of the state at which we're at in AI. And I think that's something to keep in mind, that if you think about all of the crazy things that we're starting to have to do now with CAPTCHA, you can kind of see what that means in terms of uh, what it needs to know in order to distinguish between what's human and not. And it's changing. It's interesting. So when we think about AI for our lab, we think about it in terms of the capability, sort of the cognitive, what is cognitive, what it can do cognitively, what an artificial intelligence can do. There's the narrow AI, which is basically what the systems are nowadays, and examples are things like Siri, Alexa, some of these sort of basic systems that really don't make decisions beyond what they offer. Whereas with a general AI, and there's the super intelligent AI, the general AI is more, that would be, it's an intelligence that goes beyond just one particular purpose. In fact, there's like a transfer of learning that you could do across tasks. And we haven't really quite reached that point in the sense of, um, being able to go beyond just the stuff that it's been programmed for. So it would need to be able to um, go beyond what it is being programmed for. And then with the super intelligent AI, we would say, at that point, it's its own, it is a self-directed, there is no human agent at that point, so uh, we're really talking at this point with the technologies that we see, particularly among teens, there are these narrow AI. I think the thing that is scary is the fact that narrow AI is being treated as if it's sort of a general AI when it's really not. Particularly, and I guess when I'm saying that, I really mean generative AI, when you think of it. One of the sources that we've used is from Common Sense Education. Sale Khan of Khan Academy has recommended these videos. I think the content is very good. This one, I can do a little mini thing to show you what it's like.
You've heard a lot about AI recently, but what is it really? AI, or artificial intelligence, is when we teach computers how to do things that usually require human intelligence, like identifying an object, understanding human speech, and even talking. But how do you teach a computer to learn and think? Well, it's kind of like when you train a pet to do tricks. Think of AI as a robot dog that you're training to fetch a toy. At first, your robot dog might not even know what a dog toy is, but that's the first thing you need to teach it. You show it lots of pictures of dog toys so that it learns to recognize them quickly and easily. It might make some mistakes at first, but with each correct answer, it gets a reward. Over time, the dog's recognition improves, the same way you improve at any task the more you do it. And once the robot dog gets really good at recognizing what a dog toy is, you can move on to teaching it the next step of playing fetch, running after the toy and bringing it back to you. This is basic AI, which learns by analyzing lots of data. In this case, pictures of dog toys and how to play fetch. But there's something even more complex called generative AI, which is more like a creative robot that can improvise when it comes to making art or writing. Unlike the robot dog, the creative robot learns from everything on the internet. Videos, text, photos, you name it. When you ask it a question or give a hint, It uses what it has learned from the internet to create new things, like answers, stories, or even pictures. But here's the catch. That creative robot can sometimes make mistakes, and it doesn't know the difference between good and bad. It doesn't know if what it creates is helpful or hurtful. It can't always tell fact from fiction or know where its information comes from. It might even use someone's work without crediting them. It just sucks up all the random or not so random information that's floating out there on the internet. That's why we, as humans, have to think hard and be critical about the information we receive from AI. You have to know what it does well and what it doesn't do well. As we use generative AI in our lives, remember that you have to be smart and responsible with how we use it.
So, that's an example. I think that the content is, for our purposes, is good in terms of we're not so much thinking about large language models, that they need to, like young people would need to know about how those work, as much as it's not so much the algorithms, more what is happening in a gist way. You're basically having, it's solving, these are tools that we're using, but not necessarily things that should be making decisions for us. And these are examples that they would know or not know. It may be that these examples of artificial intelligence are around them, and they may not have realized that in fact they really are. That those are examples. There's another one. This one talks more about the ways in which a chatbot has human qualities, how it's been designed to simulate human thought, and it has sort of features that make it feel so it feels like you're connecting and engaging with another human. And this is a real problem for young adults because, of course, is the nature of of that interaction and what does that mean in terms of decision making, and also it could be risky depending on the nature of that interaction. So we're trying to make that important to emphasize that there is this difference. And there's the idea of how are some tests like a Turing test, can it feel emotions and sleep, can it make mistakes, which we know both do. And going through these different kinds of questions, it's kind of fun to go through these because they even talk about they've talked about the ways in which they've used chatbots, or and it's actually really interesting to ask them too how they've been using um, ChatGPT or Gemini, because it is interesting. Um, so how does the cognitive style affect decision making? So with this verbatim representation, the gist representation, again, we discussed this at the beginning with fuzzy trace theory. The verbatim is the superficial details, whereas the gist representation reflects the underlying gist. And the, oh, wait, let me just see here. So verbatim, so then what is this one? It must have been twice. Okay, so one way that we study decision making in the lab is through different kinds of classic decision making problems. And one is the dread disease problem. And in this disease decision making process, it's you in the game frame, you imagine that the US is preparing for the outbreak of an unusual Asian disease, which is expected to kill 600 people. Two alternative programs to combat the disease have been proposed. Assume that the exact scientific estimates of the consequence of the programs are as follows. If A is adopted, 200 people will be saved. If B is adopted, there is a 1/3 probability that 600 people will be saved, and a 2/3 probability that no people will be saved. And the question is, which program would you choose? And it turns out that for adults, adults in a game frame, they want to go with the sure thing, which is what choice A is, that for sure that 200 people will be saved. However, when we gave this also to young adults as well as to ChatGPT and Gemini, and we ended up getting, let's see. Okay, so so that's basically the pattern that I'm telling you is basically what adults do in the gain frame. When it's a loss frame, and in this case, imagine the US is preparing for an outbreak of an unusual Asian disease, which is expected to kill 600 people. 2 new alternative programs to combat the disease have been proposed. Assume that the exact scientific estimates of the consequences of the programs are as follows. If program C is adopted, 400 people will die. If program D is adopted, there is a 1/3 probability that nobody will die and a 2/3 probability that 600 people will die. And in this case, because it's framed the way it is, that 400 people will die, people are irrational, adults are irrational in that they ultimately choose D, and not because it's the sure thing, but it's this 400 people will die triggers, the value about saving life. So it's irrational in the sense that it's not consistent with the gain frame. And this is what it ultimately looks like, that pattern of choices. When you look at children, adults, ChatGPT, and Bard, in the gain and the loss frame, children choose the risk both times. So that's like if there's, the probabilities, instead of there being a certain outcome. In the gain frame, adults choose the sure option, and in the loss, they choose the risky. ChatGPT, it chooses the sure, so it's consistent. I mean, both of these are actually consistent in terms of their response across the gain and the loss frames. However, it's different. You can see they're different, where Bard tends to be more risky. It turns out that, let me see here. So, right, okay, that's just another way of saying what I just said. So, this kind of pattern of this outcome, in a way, it shows that children and Bard, basically Gemini, are relatively similar in terms of the maturational, where they're at along the developmental curve. We would say in terms of where, Bard is at this, Gemini is at this point. It is in a sense, it's thinking much like an adolescent. ChatGPT is closer to, what adults do, but the fact that it made different decisions across the gain and loss frame says that how it goes about making its decision, how those processes are different than humans. And I think the take-home message from this is that the way that these generative AI models work, they don't work in a way that's human-like in its decision making. And so that becomes really important, particularly as the kinds of decisions these systems are being asked to make. We need to be mindful of that and honestly have guardrails on how this technology is used because of that. Anyway, so there is there's another kind of problem that we presented to the ChatGPT and also Gemini in those models. And when it's a problem, the dreaded disease problem is actually very well known, where we used a novel problem, and it solved it in a way that was actually much more kind of as an adolescent might approach some of these problems, where they have some knowledge but not enough to it's sort of like a verbatim, sort of a superficial kind of explanation of what it sees. And also the response tends to be like a confident response without really having a depth of knowledge of what the problem is and what the answer should be. And again, that's what makes us think that developmentally it's at an early stage. That's the way to think about these models. I don't know if that's giving enough information. I can talk some more, but
We can open it up for questions.
Sure, great.
So, questions.
Can I have a question.
Yes.
Go ahead.
In this moment, well, I feel worried because in the social media, all social media, in special Meta, use a lot of AI or artificial intelligence. The problem it is I see how identified the difference between humans and bots, but the problem it is the bots change the structure every day, and it is and I feel afraid to the scams. Right?
I'm sorry. The question is, how do you?
How how can I identify bots between humans or the difference? Sorry.
Well, I would say it's very much a context kind of thing, right? I mean, the sense of here's something that's actually kind of funny. I was talking with my 91-year-old mother. I was going through generative AI. I wanted to see what it would be like for her to use Gemini. And the first thing she said to me was, I said, well, what do you want to ask? What do you want to know about? And she said, I know something really well, and I'm going to ask it and see what it knows. And so she put in the 1972 flood that hit up here. There was a terrible flood that totally damaged Chemung and Steuben counties. It was horrible. And it was interesting because it gave her an opportunity to actually look over it. She had her own information. She knew what she was coming from. So she could then evaluate the quality of that information. And that would be the same in this situation. If you offload onto a chatbot and have it inform you, there's a real problem with that. That's part of what we should be working with is, going from, treating it to make decisions for you to, it, in a sense, it's your tool. It's almost like it's your pen, it's your whatever. It's not the decider for you. I don't know if that helps, but in terms of making that decision between what is a chatbot or not, I think it's that's kind of like what happened with, again, it is the Turing test again and again. We're trying to decide, you know, the risk of using a chatbot. And the question is, in that situation, is the chatbot, um, making the decision that you don't have autonomy over control over? And it seems to me that that would be really what the question is, the degree to which you have control over it as a tool. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and Bill, I'll note we get a lot of feedback when you're unmuted, but go ahead and we'll see how it sounds.
Oh, sure.
My question is, what effect will these recent court cases have on the development of AI? The one in New Mexico and also the one I think it was in California.
Well, I mean, I think this is the thing about Meta, right? With Meta and the idea of having to, I mean, I think definitely, from the work that we've done on decision making with and chatbots. I mean, and the issue of chatbots, Valerie was on this panel to help provide guidelines, and that's really the key here, is providing guidelines for how these things should be used or not used. And so that means that they're going to need to put in guardrails to protect kids. And I think hopefully, particularly in educational settings, you have that opportunity to show them how to use AI responsibly, because there are ways in which AI is a remarkable tool. But it's a tool. It's not a decision maker for you, and it's not very good at it. Honestly, if you really think about it. I mean, I personally, I find when I've seen stuff that people say they've created, and stuff that I've seen that, creative stuff that comes from like Gemini and stuff, it's not good. It's not good writing. People are much more creative and interesting, that humanness. And I think that's part of what we're also, making a plug for, being human, because it makes for a much more interesting information, ideas exchange. But it's really clear, because especially if you do some tests with generative AI to see you're testing it, every time that you put some kind of a sentence or something in there, you're testing it out. You're training and retraining that model, and it gives you an opportunity to test it as well.
Other questions? Yeah, I do think that those court decisions will, I think on NPR they said an earthquake in the social media industry, um, uh, finding a $3 million finding for a single case, where there might be a lot more following, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And I will note that in December, I think, was the first time that, after it wasn't a science in the virtual pub, but it has happened since then. The next day, we've gotten emails from, I forget the name of the company, where they've produced, I assume using AI, a website based on what we are doing tonight. I'm guessing this will happen for tonight's session as well, where they break down the talk into chapters, and there's a podcast included with it, with two AIs talking about the content of the session. And I've found the ones that I've taken a look at to be pretty well done and free. I think I think if we used it extensively, they would start charging us, or they must have some economic model for this.
Uh-huh.
But I'm wondering if you have thoughts about the implications of things like that.
No, it's interesting that you said it, because we have a research project now on what's uh, creative license, uh, um, copyright law.
Right,
We
right.
also do legal decision making, as well as health and risk decision making. And um, uh, I think, again, these are tools. If it's summarizing what I'm saying, that's helpful. I don't think it's to me, it feels much more like it's like summarizing. It's not necessarily adding to it. It's if it's I'd love to know the quality of what it looks like in the end, in terms of, you were saying that it actually, does a good job. It sounds to me like there's a program called Notebook,
Yeah, yeah, I think it's
that,
based on that. Yeah.
yeah, where you can take information, and there are different ways in which you can organize it, manipulate the information, and it not only you take information in, but it helps, um, you know, break it down and manipulate information in different ways to pull out ideas. And it's helpful for things like writing and that kind of stuff. And to me, I think, that's one thing. If you're to enrich, I would say that's almost like a gist kind of experience where you're, in a sense, immersing yourself in the ideas. And that's a different kind of experience than taking something and saying it's your own, but rather enriching yourself, making sure that you're getting that information. That's a slightly different kind of deal, as opposed to then, saying it's not a plagiarism thing as much as it is an enrichment of information, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, I'd love to know from you all, from educators particularly, what do you, in the science domain particularly, what's happening, in terms of students using AI? I wondered about, if you, I mean, one thing I saw that I think is really kind of interesting is role playing with AI, in the sense of, where, you're, in a sense, it's almost like you're using um, Khan Academy has a great example of this, where a student's working on like a Shakespeare paper or something, and you kind of go back and forth with with the AI acting as if it's an ongoing dialogue over the creation of this paper that's being created. I'm curious to see if anybody has done this with science and with teens. Has anybody had that experience? Just be curious.
Question. Yeah, and I'll note on the copyright issue, I just put a link in the chat to one of those web pages with chapters of the video and the podcast from one of our sessions. And it was a climate change education session. And somebody said, are you concerned about someone stealing your ideas and copyrighted stuff? And for that kind of program, I have no concerns whatsoever if people engage with this content and take something from it. But certainly, there are other settings where I might be more worried about that.
Absolutely. We were thinking, in our case, we were thinking about with music, and you think about
Mhm.
copyright with musicians and stuff like that, like what that means. I'd say in academic endeavors like this, where you're trying to encourage, particularly thinking about ideas, how to use them, manipulate information to kind of find ways in which to increase your absorption, your ability to immerse yourself in the content.
Other
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Um, I'm curious, since you've been thinking about helping teenagers understand AI and working with AI, curious about where you see it fitting in the curriculum. And I'll preface it by saying, if I think of my own kids' experience, they had a technology class in middle school where I think they learned things about computers and using technology. By the time they got to high school, they didn't have that anymore, except it was maybe an elective, but it wasn't required. So where do you think would be the right place to introduce education on this subject?
I think really early on, honestly. I mean, when we did this, workshop, and I'm sorry, I'm not doing it justice, where I'd say, because it was fast and just sort of going through the ideas of, the stuff that you see on the slides. We did that with, I'd say, 13 to 14-year-olds. Then this fall, we worked with a group here on campus. There's a high school program where kids who are planning to go into engineering. We met with this group. So imagine these are kids who are pre-engineers. They've already been accepted to engineering programs. So, their technical knowledge is really quite high, in terms of this kind of stuff. And the conversations were really, really interesting. So it wasn't like, it's not so much your technical knowledge about AI, because this is more of sort of a decision making, this is more values, this is more, on the one hand, it's the it's the reasoning, it's maturity, it's those kinds of things that can, that can be enriching. And, when you say, I'd say maybe not just one place, probably multiple places. I can imagine it in wellness, because you think of the issues of mental health right now and the fact that, a lot of this is being offloaded onto digital sort of technology. And you want to make sure that when it comes to being, with mental health issues, that, that we educate, that the kids are in a situation to know, you know, uh, where's the place to go to get the help that you need, that the chatbot experience may not necessarily provide the best or safest choice. That humans are still, humans are a good choice when it comes to mental health stuff. But then at the same time, they need to have opportunities to explore the ways in which AI is really helpful. We actually did a study with decision making in doctors, and the thing we were curious about was um, whether or not they would use an AI decision making tool to help them in making decisions about whether or not to prescribe, um, uh, antibiotics. Sorry. And it's interesting because that for us that was an issue of trust. To what extent do you trust this information coming from this decision tool? And in a similar way, it's like you need kind of verification that the tool actually is a good tool to use. So, in a sense, assess its knowledge or whatever, its ability to act as a tool. But at the same time, not throw the baby out with the bathwater. If you say all AI is bad, we could be hurting ourselves by not thinking of the ways in which the AI can help us. But again, putting it in its place, which is as a tool and not as something that can something that should be a tool but is now being used to take on the role of decision maker. And that's not particularly for a young person. If anything, you would hope it would be an empowering moment where they get to tell it what to do as opposed to the other way around. You can show, what and have more autonomy and decision making yourself. But again, I think, more needs to be modeled, I think, perhaps on the ways in which one interacts with generative AI. And I hope, I don't know what the schools are doing in terms of teaching how, what the guidelines are for within schools and stuff in terms of how you guys are using AI, what the rules are. Um,
I think the rules are emerging and mostly don't exist yet. Other questions?
Well, I don't know if I am not sure because I remember a movie with John Hurt that, and I believe that it is similar to our artificial intelligence because in this movie the people are be are the people are be controlled by a television or electronic system with a different image but a monotonous au- audio.
I I think you cut out a word or two there. I'm not quite sure what the question was.
Well, if the system it will be control the feelings of the human feelings or manipulate. Sorry.
Well, one of the things I think that we learned from with COVID was that how powerful emotion was in terms of having an effect on people's decision making. People were very passionate. There was a lot of passion, and it was very emotional, the science during COVID. And I'd say people think that, and this is another point. In fact, in one of the papers that I have posted in the chat, was the fact that we need to, particularly in health communications, using emotion around facts and things isn't such a bad. It isn't so bad, using emotion. We often in science we're told not to cut emotion out, but actually emotion is really helpful, particularly when you want someone to get the weight, the importance of some kind of information that you're trying to convey, particularly if there's a risk involved. And I'm thinking about, in our case, we have situations where people have to make a decision about whether they should take a particular medical treatment, for example, like Hep C, whether they should take the Hep C medical option, or should they go the traditional route. And one treatment was you just do it once, and or the other, where you do it once, it's a new technology, as opposed to the old way, which requires, there's more, it's known, but there's more involved in terms of getting cured. And there isn't a cure, I'm sorry, whereas the one shot is a cure. And it's interesting because um, uh, there was hesitancy in terms of, you would think most people would want to jump to get a vaccine, not a vaccine, but an actual treatment that would cure you of Hep C, if you knew it was only, you only needed to take one treatment. And a lot of people they weren't convinced. And part of the issue had also to do with the way it was being communicated, whether there was emotion about it. Like, imagine you just need to do this once. It can be cured. And, like having some some emotion involved with the decision. And I think um, that's very much, I'd say emotionality is very much a part of the human experience. I think chatbots give the illusion, because it is a mental simulation. When we talk with chatbots, they give, like if you type into Gemini, what I love is it's this, you could have written the the worst thing, and you'll get this wonderful compliment of, oh, how wonderful. This is the best piece of writing I've ever, read in my life. And it's using that emotional, you know, uh, response to engage you. But
Yeah,
that's
there was
again, that's part of what they need to be,
Right.
kids need to be on the lookout for.
a piece on that on NPR this afternoon on All Things Considered, actually, talking about the false praise from AI, essentially. It's very interesting. Other questions? Maybe one more to wrap us up, or maybe not. If no more questions, then we will see you all in a couple of weeks for
Oh,
Adrian Lim. Oh, one more
only I
question.
have,
Go ahead.
only have, yes, sorry. I only have a last question. Why can I, no, sorry. How can I keep in touch with you, doctor?
Um, uh, in the chat, I have my contact information. If you go into the chat, they can save it, right? The chat.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, you can click on the three dots up at the top of the chat, and she shared her contact info pretty early on. I'll see if I can find that and copy it. And oh, okay, let's see. Copy the first one of those with links to things, including her email address, although it tells me I have put in too many characters. So let me just cut out a piece of that. It's kind of weird that you were able to do it and it wouldn't let me. Something about
It's funny that you said that, because the one thing I was going to say, that I feel like even the term artificial intelligence has hijacked our humanness. It was
Right, yes,
unfortunate.
yeah.
It was an unfortunate, you know,
Sure.
the idea that they would even do that, use the
Right.
term, because I think it's loaded and made it so much harder for people to, break away from, get us into this, bind of what's human and what's not.
Yeah, indeed. All right. Well, with that, we'll call it a night. And thank you very much, Allison.
Sure. Thank you.
Good talk.
Bye. Thank you.
Have a good night, all.